So let your heart be my heart and our heart be everything. Oh, we'll all know we're all part of one heart. So open up your heart to all the lost and lonely. Let no one be alone tonight before our one and only. Before our one and only.
Shabbat Shalom, Cantor Simmons.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. How are you?
I am doing very well. I am glad that it is Shabbat. How are you?
I agree. Ready for a little rest.
Yes. And before the rest, we're going to rock out, and it's going to be great. And we are glad that you are here out there in internet land. We are glad that you are with us, whether you're joining us on our website or on our Facebook page. And we want to wish you Shabbat Shalom. We hope it's been a good week, a meaningful week. If you have pains that you are here to share, we hope we can help you carry that burden for a while. We'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. And so if you're on Facebook, the Facebook chat, if you're on our website, you can also now there's a chat feature on the live stream page. And we have, as always, a question for you this Shabbat, something for you to weigh in with over the next couple of minutes. And we'll talk about it again after Ve'ahavta. But the question for tonight is, what is the best advice you ever received? Question for tonight is, what is the best advice you ever received? Let's fill the chat with good advice, and we'll share some of that out as we get a little later in our service. If you would like to follow along and you have a prayer book at home, we'll call out pages from time to time. Also, many of the prayers you will want to pray are going to be broadcast on the screen tonight. And also, the wonderful Jason Plotkin has already put in the Facebook chat a link to a flip book of the entire prayer book if you want to follow along there. So any way you want to follow along is going to work tonight. So we are going to begin our service by lighting our Shabbat candles. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be amongst those who kindle light.
And we now light our candles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We continue now welcoming Shabbat with a new song that is a very beloved and old melody, Shir Chadash. now to our beloved Lecha Dodi, welcoming in Shabbat like a bride. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabera. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. La la Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabera. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'diburecha, Ishmi'anu el ha'miyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'liti la 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 la. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nercha, ki hi mekor ha'beracha, merosh mikadem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. La 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 la. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki va'orel kumi ori, uri ori shir dameri, ki Adonai alaich nigla. La 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 la. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. And now we rise and we face the entrance of the room we are in, just imagining that Shabbat bride coming in to welcome. We welcome. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha u'betzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, boi chala, la 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 la. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Lecha Dodi, Likrat Likrat Kala, Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela. Penei Penei Shabbat Nikabela.
We remain standing if we are standing, or standing in spirit, as we continue with Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu is found on page 28.
Ya la la, la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la, la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai, Hamimora. Baruch Adonai Hamorach, Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam, 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 Le'olam va'ed. Ya la la, ya la la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la, ya la la la. Ya la la, ya la la la.
For our Ma'ariv Aravim this evening, a poem about the beauty and wonder of God's nature. It's called The Optimist by J.W. Hammond. Who would have the sky any color but blue, or the grass any color but green, or the flowers that bloom the summer through of other color or sheen? How the sunlight gladdens the human heart, how the sound of the falling rain will cause the tender tears to start and free the soul from pain. Oh, this old world is a great old place, and I love each season's change. The river, the brook of purling grace, the valley, the mountain range. And when I am called to quit this life, my feet will not spurn the sod. Though I leave this world with its beauty rife, there's a glorious one with God. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Avta, Amcha Avta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shokbenu uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratecha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu le'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla nege yomam v'layla be'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. We continue with Ve'ahavta, which can be found on page 36. I also want to remind you, if you haven't yet shared, I did see that there's some good advice in the chat, but if you haven't yet shared, please share some of the best advice you've ever received. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
So this week's Torah portion which we'll talk about more in depth later, has the beginning of Moses' speech to the Israelites before his death. And it constitutes effectively Moses' advice that he is giving people upon his death. And so we wanted to know what some of the best advice that you had ever received. And there have been some great answers in the chat. And I'm going to share some of them with you. Nancy said advice from her father was to lower your expectations. Susie said, when 3 people tell you you're drunk, it's time to go to bed. Nora said, believe in yourself. Richard said, to be a good listener. That's why we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. And Jamie said her dad always advised her to be true to herself, even if others thought she was weird. My dad said the same thing. Cindy said to be a good person. Kathy said, always start with the toughest task in front of you. Elizabeth said, above all, to thine own self be true. Carol Brush said, expect nothing and you won't be disappointed, was the advice she received from her mom. And on our website, Dawn said, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? Yet if I'm only for myself, what good am I? And Jennifer and Jeff Ross said, patience is a virtue. I'm sure there's more coming in. We appreciate all this good advice. Keep sharing it. If one of the things you get out of your Shabbat worship experience this week is some good advice, I think that will make the prayer even more worth it. So with that, we are going to continue with our praying as we prepare for Micha Mocha. Here comes the slide. All right. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing, and the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. Join with me. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the suffering will gather there and become song, ringing out in every corner of the earth from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like caravans in the desert will all to that morning throng.
I'm channeling a little bit of Joel's flute on that one, and then there's like a Shabbatones jump in the middle. I was really feeling
I hear it in my head.
More than the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews, says Ahad Ha'am. And many of our prayers are prayers that are part of the weekday service. They're said every day. And some of our prayers, a select few, are specific to Shabbat. And so this next prayer we're going to sing, Yismechu, is one of those special prayers just meant for Shabbat. And this idea that Shabbat has kept the Jews, that Shabbat keeps us going. It is this sacred time each week when we have to stop, it helps us to mark time, and it is this time to find joy. And it turns out our prayer book tells us, sometimes, there's that little information under the prayers at the very bottom of the page. And here it says in Mishkan Tefillah that Yismechu contains 24 Hebrew words said to correspond to the 24 hours of Shabbat. And I love to think that, although some say that Shabbat is 25, but anyway, but still, I just love this idea that maybe, each hour of Shabbat is really special and holy, and that maybe you can find some little moment of joy within each hour of Shabbat. And so now we're going to find some joy. We're going to sing a newer version of Yismechu. It's one by Rabbi Joe Black of Colorado fame, where Rabbi Fixler hails from. And it goes like this.
שומרי שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג וקוראי עונג ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת המקדשי מקדשי שבי כולם ישמחו Shabbat.
We are going to continue with that sense of joy for Shabbat with our Amidah, which begins on page 46. We invite you to rise in body or in spirit.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el hagadol hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, gomel chasadim tovim, ve'konei hakol, ve'zocher chastei avot ve'imahot, u'mevi geula livnei v'neihem, leman shemo be'ahava, melech ozer u'moshia u'magen. Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei hakol ata rav lehoshia, morid hatal. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofei cholim, umatir asurim, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע ונאמנת להחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated if you are standing as we continue with the prayer for the holiness of Shabbat. Join me in praying these words. Days pass and the years vanish and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence like lightning illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder how filled with awe is this place and we did not know it. We continue with the words of Shalom Rav, page 60.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu
One more poem on this Shabbat, which we are trying to fill with words, since the name for our Torah portion this week is Devarim, which means words. And this poem is about words. It's my favorite poem. In fact, the first conversation that Cantor, Simmons, and I ever had, we talked about my love for this poem because I'm a big dork. And so I thought as we prepare for silent prayer this evening, I would share with you The Quiet World by Jeffrey McDaniel. In an effort to get people to look into each other's eyes more and also to appease the mutes, the government has decided to allot each person exactly 167 words per day. When the phone rings, I put it to my ear without saying hello. In the restaurant, I point at chicken noodle soup. I am adjusting well to the new way. Late at night, I call my long-distance lover and proudly say, I only used 59 today. I saved the rest for you. And when she does not respond, I know that she used all her words up. So I slowly whisper, I love you, I love you, I love you, 32 1/3 times. And after that, we sit on the line and listen to each other breathe. Silent prayer is our opportunity to open a line with God and say to God whatever words we have left in the day. And if we do not have any words left, just to stay on the line and listen to each other breathe. We take a few moments now for silent prayer.
Say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael
We offer now a prayer for healing and wholeness, a prayer for strength and recovery for those in our lives who are seeking it. We are thinking about those who are struggling with illness, acute and enduring. We are thinking about those who are struggling with addiction and those in recovery. We're thinking about those people who struggle with chronic pain, chronic illness, those suffering from loss. We are praying for all of them to find a refuah shlema, a return to wholeness and strength. We're thinking about members of our community, including David Askenaz, Marcia Block, Bradley Borden, Carol Brush, Melba Berman, Jennifer Carey, Michelle Cohen, Miles Cohn, David Kottner, Richard Dana, Gregory Edmond, Ann Graubart, Vicki Greenberg, Jerry Hooks, Sarah James, Bob Ketchum, Diane Ketchum, Dara Lambden, Lawrence Levy, Velma Lingo, Edward Simmons, Melinda Scholar, Angelica Taylor, Marcia Tushita, Milton Wagner, Roger Williams, Chaim Liebisch Vevel, Ben Sheva, Esther Bat Ruth, Gelka Nechama Bat Leba Chaya, and all who are suffering with physical illness, emotional distress, and pain. We offer these words of healing.
Mi shebeirach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
A few announcements for this Shabbat. We are grateful to Nathan Malik for helping us with tonight's service. You can't see him, but he is working his tuchus off in the background to make sure everything goes smoothly, and we are grateful to him. Cantor, Simmons, and I hope that you will make plans to join us this coming Wednesday night for our first annual, but maybe not annual, Emanu Tisha B'Av service, which we're calling How Lonely Sits the City, Wednesday night, July 29th at 8 p.m. It's going to be a really valuable, we think, year to think about the themes of Tisha B'Av, maybe a holiday you've never observed before, which is all about how do we deal with loss and change in our lives. We ask that you register in advance to get the Zoom information and guidance on how to prepare for the service. So check out our website for how to do that. Our Tisha B'Av observance continues the following day, Thursday, July 30th, as our Director of Congregational Learning, Stephanie Carlson, leads a Tisha B'Av edition of her Taste of Talmud class. It won't be a taste because it's a fast day, but there'll be Talmud for sure. At 12:30 p.m., Zoom information can be found in the Synagogue Communications. No registration for that is necessary. And lastly, our clergy team and staff want to remind you that we are here for you now and always. If you need pastoral support or assistance from a member of our staff, please do not hesitate to reach out and let us know how we can do our best to be a helping hand in these challenging times. One of the stranger side effects of living in the age of social media is the proliferation of images that get shared of inspiring aphorisms set on top of pictures. Anyone who has spent any time on Facebook or Instagram knows what I'm talking about, but in case you don't, I have some examples for you. Hang on. So just a couple of examples of what I am talking about. We have quotes from people like Mahatma Gandhi. We have inspiring messages. This one was interesting to me because this is either a Chinese proverb or something Theodore Roosevelt said. It wasn't clear. And this may be my favorite. Here's a quote from Malcolm X, who famously said, "If not now, when? And if not me, then who?" Or maybe it was this person who said that, or maybe it was this person who said that, or maybe it was Hermione who said that, or Incubus, or as we know, probably it was Rabbi Hillel who said that in our text in Pirkei Avot. I have always struggled with these kinds of aphorisms. Whenever I see them, all I can think about is a poster that hung in my elementary school classroom that looked something like this. Maybe you are a person who loves to share these kinds of things, and I swear I'm not standing in judgment of that, but it just has never worked for me. This week, I had seen a number of these images, all attributed to the same speaker. Perhaps you've seen them too. This week, social media has been full of quotes from the late Congressman and civil rights leader advocate John Lewis, who died on Friday. As people who started to write their tributes and their reminiscences of this American hero, my stream began to fill up with images and quotes of Representative Lewis, images like these. Inspiring for sure, moving. I heard a lot of quotes about good trouble this week. Powerful statements of freedom, optimism, hope, and possibility. Powerful words to be sure, and each of them fits nicely in an Instagram square. But I wondered as I kept swiping through these images, if this week, if they were a fitting tribute or not. Was boiling this man's 80 years of life into a quote about God or good trouble or about optimism helpful or reductive? This man whose life was defined by action, who crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma and was beaten by police, who at age 23 was the youngest speaker at the March on Washington, who served in Congress representing Georgia for more than 3 decades, was his memory enhanced by the proliferation of these quotes, or was it diminished by them? This man who had seen this country change so much, who had led this country through so much, who had come to the end of his life only to be reminded of how much growing we still had to do, were his words enough? This week we start a new book of the Torah, Deuteronomy. The name Deuteronomy comes from the Greek deuteros pneumos, or the second law. The earliest Hebrew references to it call it Mishnah Torah, a restatement of the law. It was given this name because the book is Moses' final speeches, his retelling of the Israelites' story in their 40 years of wandering from Egypt to Sinai to the banks of the Jordan. He restates a number of the laws the Israelites have received along the way, and thus Mishnah Torah, or additional Torah. But Mishnah Torah is not how the book came to be known in Hebrew over the generations. Instead, we call it by one of the first words in the book. Eile hadevarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael be'ever hayarden. These are the words that Moses spoke to all of Israel on the other side of the Jordan. And so we call this book Devarim, or words. Of course, the whole Torah is made up of nothing but words. So why is it that it is the name of only this book? Perhaps this is meant to show us Moses' transformation. One of the very first lines that Moses says in the Torah, all the way back in Exodus, when he is addressed by God at the burning bush, is, Lo ish devarim anochi. I am not a man of words. Moses tells God that he is not a good choice for a prophet because he is slow of speech and slow of tongue. How far Moses has come between that day and this one, between not being a man of words to being a prophet whose speech makes up an entire book of the Torah. The story of the Torah is a story of Moses finding his voice, and through him the Israelites find theirs. The stuttering, humble man of Exodus becomes the great orator of Devarim. The name reminds us that these are his words. And how does he use his words? He retells us our story. Devarim begins with a retelling, a stage-by-stage telling of the Israelites' journey from slavery to freedom. It recounts the highs and the lows. Moses knows that he will not cross the Jordan or lead the people into the promised land. He knows that they cannot carry him with them, that he will ascend Mount Nebo and die alone. But he has also come to understand the power of his words. He knows that the words and stories he gives his people are something they can take with them. It's something they can teach their children, and through them his legacy might live on. So Moses spends his final hours retelling the people their own story. In the book Liminal Thinking, Creating the Change You Want by Changing the Way You Think, Dave Gray writes that a belief is a story in your head. The story that Moses teaches the people is more than just an attempt to relay facts. Moses sets out to shape who they are and what they believe. As Steve Silbert writes, Moses tells us a story to give meaning to the facts. He shares a belief and a vision in terms of what has happened, what it all meant, and why it was worth remembering. He connects the past to the present and the present to the future. In doing so, he teaches us to be a people of storytellers. Moses, the man who couldn't string a sentence together, has become the man who will give his people a story that will shape their vision of tomorrow. This is the power of words. They are not mere words. They are not Shakespeare's meaningless words. Rather, they are everything. The Jewish mystics believed that words were the tool that God used to create the universe, that God's words are the fundamental building blocks of the universe, that in the words of the psalmist, God spoke the universe into being. The mystics believe that we have the power to tap into the words that serve as this DNA of the universe, that if we speak the right combination of words, we can reshape reality, that we can speak new possibilities into being. This is the power of words at their best, that they are not just the way I get you to know what I want you to know, but the way in which we imagine new possibilities together. And this is something that John Lewis understood. He knew the power of his words. He knew his words of hope, his words of forgiveness, his words of resistance and justice could shape a new reality. The reason his death was followed by endless social media posts of quotes was that he was abundantly quotable, because he, like Moses, was a man of words. He, like Moses, knew he had to give people a story. John Lewis says, ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes, and each of us in every generation must do our part. He was telling us a story. He was telling us how we fit into a larger story of past, present, and future. He was reminding us that if we all share a story, we can reshape the nature of what it means to be a human being. Let me tell you just one story about the power of John Lewis's words. As I said, Lewis was the youngest speaker at the March on Washington when he was just 23. But the 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial did not hear the speech he had written, because the organizers of the march had seen his draft and there was too much righteous fire in it. They knew the power of his words even then, and they worried that his radical words might be too much. As historian Angus Johnston has noted, a Catholic Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who was scheduled to give the opening invocation, had received an early copy of Lewis's speech the day before the march. He freaked out. Even while the other speeches were going on, Lewis was huddled in a guard station inside the Lincoln Memorial with Dr. King and others negotiating an acceptable version of his speech. In the end, the group negotiated more than a dozen significant changes, each of them moderating its tone and substance. The final type version was completed just moments before Lewis took the stage. Lewis had written that, quote, "For the first time in 100 years, this nation is being awakened to the fact that segregation is evil and that it must be destroyed in all its forms. Your presence today proves that you have been aroused to that point of action." They had him take that paragraph out. They had him temper his criticism of the draft of Kennedy's Civil Rights Act, which he wanted to say did not go far enough to protect voting rights, to protect Black Americans from police brutality, that it was too little, too late. They made him say, "We support it with great reservation." Lewis had written that, quote, "This nation is still a place of cheap political leaders who build their careers on immoral compromise and ally themselves with open forms of political, economic, and social exploitation." They had him change it to, "By and large, American politics is dominated by politicians who do those things," and then add, "There are exceptions, of course, which we salute." But the biggest change was to a section that began with these excised words. "I want to know which side is the federal government on. The revolution is at hand and we must free ourselves of the chains of political and economic slavery." You can see why the bishop was worried. So they softened his language and made him refer not to revolution, but to completing the revolution of 1776. They tempered his calls that the Black community had been waiting too long, been too often betrayed, and that they must, quote, "not confine their marching to Washington." I don't want to focus only on what he changed. Lewis's speech was filled with fire, holy fire that was so powerful that the people around it knew that the world was not ready to hear all of it, not prepared for the full force of his words. Lewis spent the rest of his life doling out that fire. He spent the rest of his career living the lessons he learned on that day in Lincoln's shadow, that he had a powerful tool at his disposal, the tool of words, and that when thoughtfully deployed, those words could build up or break down, create or destroy. So maybe I'm okay with Lewis's legacy being, at least in part, Instagrammable quotes. Maybe this is not as trite a salute to him as it initially seemed. Maybe it's even what he would have wanted. Moses stood on the banks of the river and said, "I cannot go with you across the Jordan, but you can take my words with you. You can retell these stories, and with them you can build a future." John Lewis said the same thing. "Here are my words, my enduring gift to you. Let them be light. Let them be hope. Let them be inspiration that you might go forward into freedom." It seems only fitting to give Representative Lewis the last word on this Shabbat. So here are his final words from the March of Washington. Edited though they may be, they are still righteous fire.
We're talking about slow down and stop. We will not stop. All of the forces of Eastland, Barnett, Wallace, and Thurman will not stop this revolution. If we do not get meaningful legislation out of this Congress, the time will come when we will not confine our marching to Washington. We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. But we will march with the spirit of love and with the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today. By the forces of our demand, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them together in the image of God and democracy. We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient.
We continue now with our service as we turn to a moment of memory. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, life and death. We take a quiet moment for memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who have died in this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We think this Shabbat of Minash Mayance, Jerome Lipnick, and Diane Dante, who have been laid to rest in recent days. And we recall the yard sites of Albert Abramson, Dominique Arriaga, Sarah Leah Ash, Sarah Axelrod, Max Becker, Dorothy Bernstein, Clara Blyden, Francis G. Bondi, Olga Breyer, Jonathan Paul Brody, Edward Buddy Brooks, Joan Beth Brown, Virgil Clark, Elaine Clark, Bradley Keith Cypress, Abe Daly, Fosia Korani Daney, Francis Weinstein Davidson, Saul Davis, Natalia Dmitrieva, Lena Eisenberg, Rhoda Dubois Engbrock, Faye Ettinger, Gregory Finkelstein, Marks Finkelstein, Betty Friedman, Basami Friedman, Jeannie Gelber, Joseph Gelber, Harold Sylvan Goldstein, Saul Golub, Calman Gordon, Chester Gravetsky, Hyman Hart, Lorenzo Hartfield, Sally Held, Philip Held, Isabel Smith Herstein, Phil Randall Jackson, Charlene Joachim, Kathy Kaplan, Edward Karish, Sylvan Karchmer, Morris Karp, Abe Morris Katz, Sylvia Bruckner Kaufman, Harry Keeg, Joan Keller, Florence Mormon Kern, Vera G. Klein, Sidney Herschel Krakauer, Lester Landy, Clara Lauterbach, Judy Lauterbach, Harry Lavis, Jacob Levy, Doris Payne Levine, William N. Levine, Rose Levinson, Goldie Levinson, Barbara Livitz, Erwin Livitz, Clara Lurie, Morris I. Mass, Miriam Mallon, David N. Miller, Mary G. Miller, Minette Moore, Hyman Paley, Arthur Paul, Sarah Perlis, Molly Myron Present, Alec Rarisher, Shirley Reiser, Emil Rodersman, Gloria Vogel Samuels, Lisa Kurt Shield, Lena S. Shield, Robert Schnitzer, Sherry Berman Schreiber, Peter E. Schwartz, Amy Beth Siegel, Henry Seinfeld, Helen Gelfon Shackett, Samuel Jacob Shapiro, William F. Sheldon, Emma D. Simon, Walter Singer, Lawrence P. Slavin, Alan Mark Simon, Joseph Solomon, Regina Spiegel, Harold S. Stalerow, Mervyn Tatter, Marilyn Taubman, Martin Treistman, Norman Nathan Tyser, Joseph Wasserberg, Louis E. Weinberg, Ida Kellen Werlin, Charles C. Willis, Isidore Wolchansky, Mary Dinner Wolf, and Daniel Wolfert. We rise now as one community for the words of mourners Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirtei ve'almich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yom echon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen, yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'mea maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei kudsha brichu La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'ne'emata ta'amiran be'ama v'imru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Osei shalom b'mromav Huya aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen
Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. We now move into our kiddush, our blessing over the wine. You have your wine cup? Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh Zeicher litziat Mitzrayim Ki vanu v'acharta Ve'otanu kidashta Mikol amim Ve'shabbat kodecha Be'ahava uvratzon Hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. L'chaim. I'm pretty excited about my challah today.
My thing is like I'm on. Oh. Ooh. What's going on there? Tell me about that.
Well, there was a daddy-daughter day today. B and David were together and they made challah, and there were all these interesting shapes. She told me this was meant to be a crown, but turned out as an anemone.
Okay, a challah anemone.
Yeah.
Friends like these who need challah anemones.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'te'avon.
B'te'avon. I can only bake challah on the days where I'm not leading Friday night services because there's too much going on. So like you're never going to see the homemade challah on a service.
We conclude with our new song that is an old song. Let all our old songs be new, and let us bring in new songs to enhance our old songs.
Our God, the one who spoke and brought the earth into existence, we hope to find an understanding of the creative power of our words. We hope to tap into something mystical and eternal in our words. The power of our words to create or destroy, the power of our words to build up or break down, the power of our words to hurt or to heal. We hope to understand some of that power and to use our words wisely to build a better world. We hope to tap into some of the righteous fire of those words so that we can make a world of justice, a world of healing, a world of hope, and a world of peace. And we say together, Amen.
Amen.
Shiru Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru Adonai shir chadash.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, Cantor.
Shabbat shalom, Rabbi.